Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. This is our quarterly TIBCO Analytics Meetup. I'm Michael O'Connell, Chief Analytics Officer at TIBCO. I run the data science team, and I'm excited to have Sweta Kotha presenting today on natural language processing. Sweta is a real expert in this area, so you're in for a feast here. Standard confidentiality and disclaimer agreement. I want to, before we get started, give you a brief update on the TIBCO Analytics Forum. It's coming right up, June the 13th to the 15th. It's free, it's digital, it's very convenient for you to join. A lot of great content, really encourage you to sign up. The theme of the conference is analytics in time and space. We'll be covering all kinds of examples of analytics on data that's time-based and all types of latencies and geospatial data. We have a couple of great guest speakers, Nadi Bremer, who runs the site visualcinnamon.com, incredible data scientist, visual analytics expert, artist, and then Ben Schneiderman, who's got a new book out on human-centered AI. Ben started the Human Computer Interaction Lab at the University of Maryland some years back. That's actually where Spotfire was born. So Nadi is going to be talking about, with examples from her Data Sketches book, really incredible, a JavaScript developer, Nadi, and really in line with what we're doing with the Spotfire product, opening it up for extending the visual palette with JavaScript. She's going to speak about all her work with Scientific American and Google and all kinds of stuff. It's going to be awesome. She's a data biz guru. She's got a lot of followers, and she's going to be very exciting. And then Ben, with his new book, Human-Centered AI, ensuring human control while also increasing the level of automation. A real treatise on what's going on in research, academia, policy making, ethics, just a broad-ranging piece of work. We're excited to have him present. So look, to kick off Sweta today, natural language processing. There's been obviously a lot of activity the last decade. I didn't realize until we did this research that Siri was launched in 2011, the first modern digital assistant. It was really a pet project of Steve Jobs. In fact, he hung on and died like right after the Siri launch. And then Jeff Bezos also had a personal project with Alexa, which came out in 2014, launched with the Amazon Echo. So really innovative work there between 2010 and 2015. And then Microsoft came out with speech to text in 2016, providing human parity and conversational speech recognition. It was a landmark. And then along the way, Google with DeepMind, providing a generalist AI agent. But all those companies have competed and brought out a really incredible range of digital assistants and based on NLP. And academia, lots of great work going on in neural language models, RNN, along short-term memory models, word-to-vec, pre-trained algorithms, attention-based models, transformers, a lot of activity going on in academia. And then if you look at the NLP's software, one of those things where, NLTK has been out for just forever. And even when I was coming up in the early 2000s and R was big and S+ was big, NLTK and the NLP packages were always Python based. The Stanford Core NLP package, Stanza, Java, code with Python interface, NLTK, of course, and pretty much everything came out as a Python type SDK or interface. So the popular ones, NLTK, Spacey, Spark NLP and John Snow Labs, and then Hugging Face. And Sweta has done an amazing job in using some of these to, inside of Spotfire as data functions, using our Python data function construct so that you can make an arbitrary marking or a click and trigger an NLP function. Now, the NLP functions that she has in the NLP toolkit, one is for featurization and one for sentiment and NER type analyses, all the machine learning pieces. Inside of this one download NLP toolkit. We also take advantage of the pre-trained models that the various cloud vendors have through their Python SDKs. And this is some of the recent Spotfire data functions that you can download from the Spotfire TIBCO Community site. And these allow you to basically invoke them, through this flyout over here. You can point and click your way through any of these data functions that you add, into your Spotfire analysis. As I mentioned, going through Boto 3 and cognitive services, Python SDKs, we can call through our TIBCO Data Science products, Python Notebook, or through the Spotfire data function environment, we can call all of the NLP pre-trained models that the cloud vendors offer as well. So lots of NLP that you can do inside of Spotfire. So with that, let me hand off to Sweta to take you on a tour of what we have and give you some demonstrations. Sweta?
Hello, thanks, Michael. So just for a quick introduction, today I'm going to be showing a couple of demos. And again, this is focused on the NLP toolkit. So I'll show you where you can actually get the toolkit and also what the toolkit Spotfire DXP looks like. And I'll also show an advanced use case of how you can use this toolkit using the Yelp data set. So with that, I can go ahead and share screen. Okay. So this is the TIBCO Community Exchange. And here is where you can get the NLP Python toolkit for TIBCO Spotfire. If you go to releases, you'll see that we actually just have a new release this month, and you can get the latest version of the toolkit. And now I'm going to go ahead and show what the actual toolkit looks like. So within that exchange component, you're going to have a DXP. And this is going to give you step-by-step instructions on how you can run the data functions inside this DXP. So again, this NLP toolkit essentially houses two different data functions. One of them is called NLP features, and the other is called NLP entities and sentiment. So the features data function does everything from pre-processing your text to extracting n-gram features. The entities and sentiment function performs named entity recognition, part of speech, and sentiment analysis. So this DXP is going to give you an intro, it's going to help you set up, and it's also going to give you tips throughout it. So actually, if I go to this toolkit's second page, you'll see here that there's setup, in which you can specify parameters and directly run the different types of data functions. And then the next two pages actually help with visualizing the results, because of course, once we perform these analyses, it's up to Spotfire to highlight, the insights within the actual NLP outputs. So from the n-grams features, from the NLP features data function, one thing we get is this thing called n-grams, which are contiguous sequences of text in our documents. So this is something that you can, visualize over here as a bar chart. And additionally, you also get key phrases from your text. So here we're looking at the original text and what it looks like once it's cleaned up. And you can see all the key phrases within the text itself as a filter. And lastly, one way that we just show how you can visualize the different types of tagging performed in the entities and sentiment data function is through this combination or this flexibility of choosing, for example, like a part of speech label and then seeing everything that pops up. So here, if I click on nouns, you'll see all the nouns in your text. Over here, if I looked at NER tags, you'll see the different types of labels for countries, cities, and states. And you'll see the resulting items that have been identified in our text pop up. So this is actually, this NLP toolkit is run on a data set of Edinburgh Airbnb reviews. So likewise, you can see how that's coming up here, of course, as a country or location. And lastly, we give some tips over here on how you can actually look at the sentiment analysis. So we're looking at the actual distribution of sentiment, and you can also tag different types of phrases. So this is just a quick overview of the toolkit itself. But what I really want to show is jump into a demo that's kind of more of an advanced use case of how you can use this toolkit. The toolkit is meant to be a type of starter. So you can take those data functions and you have a lot of flexibility in terms of the full-blown dashboard that you can create. So this demo today is going to be focusing on the Yelp data set. And the reason I've chosen it actually is because there's 3 different types of text columns. So I think it can give some insights on how you can use this toolkit on different types of text. And it's also going to show how we can use the NLP features and NLP entities and sentiment data functions in quite a few different ways. So just as an overview, this first page of the dashboard, as in any dashboard, is just meant to give you an overview of the data that we're working with. So I took a subset of the Yelp data, and this is centered in New Jersey, Delaware, and Philadelphia. So for those who aren't familiar, Yelp is a sort of site or application that a lot of people use in order to get recommendations for different types of businesses. So you can search for a variety of businesses, whether it's restaurants, different types of services, etc. So across all these businesses, we'll see over here that we have review counts for the businesses that different users give. And we also have the ratings in stars. So on average across all these, you see that they have a rating of 3.5, which is going to be in the middle on a scale of 1 to 5. And you can see all this, also see the ratings broken down here. So there's a color scheme throughout this DXP where a minimum rating is going to be this lightish pink color, and the maximum rating is going to be this darker purple color, and average is going to be a neutral blue. So one thing that was just interesting to me was to look at review count across the stars. So I thought that this might be an indication of popular places, those with higher reviews. And interestingly, you'll see that a lot of these destinations are actually centered around Philadelphia, which is known to be a pretty huge food city. So it's not too surprising. You can click any one or subset of these and look at how their ratings look over time. And then here we have a text card mod that helps us read the reviews at these locations. So this page is really just meant to be an overview of the data that we're working with. Now let's look at the actual text component. So like I mentioned, there's 3 different types of text columns in here. There's business categories, which you can see here are these comma separated descriptors of a business. There's tips. So users are going to leave tips for any business. And usually these tips tend to be 1 or 2 sentences, so they're pretty short. And lastly, there's the actual reviews themselves. Now, these tend to be much longer. They can range from a few sentences to multiple paragraphs, and these are the reviews that users leave for the restaurant. So you'll notice over here that the actual length of these text columns differ. So categories and tips tend to be much shorter than reviews on average. But you also notice that the semantic nature of them are also different. So, there's not too much semantic meaning in these business categories, but there's a lot more to analyze when it comes to these reviews. So the question I asked myself was when I was exploring this data set is, how can I dig deeper into it? So I wanted to create a page that was essentially dedicating to unraveling this hierarchy in our data. And this is what this dashboard page is dedicated to search functionality. So I went ahead and took the NLP features data function and I ran it on our business categories and our tips. And I went ahead and ran the NLP entities and sentiment data function on our reviews. So what we get here is the different n-grams from our business categories. And here you can see that it's focusing on all n-grams by popularity. I can go to bigrams, and then I can also look at trigrams and see which ones are most frequent. And clicking on any one of these, for example, restaurants, you'll see that the corresponding keywords from the business categories also breaks down. So if I click on restaurants, you can see pizza restaurants, Chinese restaurants, Mexican restaurants. So this is unraveling, this is creating a hierarchy for our data essentially. Likewise, you can also see different types of services when it comes to plumbing, tree services, and key or locksmith services. So now I also included the NER over here because on the NER on the reviews, and one interesting thing that you might see is that if you click on a certain type of label, so here I clicked on the label nationalities or religious or political groups, you'll see all the different entities that are found in our text. And you can see here that it actually corresponds to different types of food cuisines often. So if I were to click on, for example, Chinese, you'll see all the reviews popping up that mainly involve Chinese food and also where they're located. And lastly, I included the tips n-grams here as a filter, just in case anyone wants to do a deep dive into restaurants that potentially maybe only carry cash or not only carry cash, but accept cash. And also those that could accommodate vegetarian or even vegans. So this page essentially digs deeper into our data and it provides a search functionality on top of all this text data that we need to unravel. So now that we have a better understanding of our data, the next thing that we can do is actually evaluate our businesses. So far we just explored our businesses, and this is where the sentiment analysis really comes in. So we do have user ratings. So each user can give their own rating on a scale of 1 to 5, but this can be potentially biased. There's always ways to standardize user ratings, but it might be beneficial to bring in this unsupervised or this, pre-trained model that we use for NLP to perform sentiment analysis. So here what we're looking at is the sentiment distribution across all of our reviews. So you can see here, -1 indicates a negative review and 1 indicates a more positive review. And this also reflects the color scheme here too. So if I click on this upper positive section, you'll see that a lot of the phrases associated with these reviews tend to be like delicious, magnificent, etc. And if I click on, the opposite end of the spectrum, you'll see that you'll see phrases like very disappointed, absolutely horrible. And you'll also see, of course, the corresponding text, the reviews associated with this. I also included the part of speech tags here because I think, well, specifically adjectives and adverbs, because I think those can also be good descriptors in addition. So this page overall is meant to help evaluate businesses. If you're concerned with those maybe that have lower ratings, or if you only want to filter out ones that have better ratings for whatever reasons. So far what we've been able to do is both explore our different types of businesses and evaluate them to some degree. Now, the next thing in mind that's interesting to us is to be able to create some type of recommendations to our end user. So this is focusing on making business recommendations, and this is something that perhaps Yelp can take themselves and make use of this data. So when we run our NLP features data function, one of the outputs from that is what we call an n-gram matrix. So without getting too much into it, whenever you take text data, if you want to perform any type of advanced modeling or advanced analytics on it, you need to take that text and make it into some type of numerical representation. So that's what an n-gram matrix is. And when we take that representation of our text, we have essentially a numerical vector or some type of number for each one of our text reviews or documents in our text. So what I went ahead and did is take one of our data functions. It's called the k-means clustering data function for TIBCO Spotfire. And I ran that on this n-gram matrix that we generated from our NLP data function. And what that does is it clusters together similar reviews. So here you can actually see different types of clusters and the number of reviews in each cluster. So you'll see cluster one says that there's going to be 125 reviews that are grouped together as similar. So here are just the metrics for the different clusters, but here we can look at any one of those clusters. So if I, for example, am clicking on cluster one that has 125 reviews, you can go ahead and read the different types of reviews here. And you can also look at their keywords in the circular tree map mod. And interestingly, by doing that, you'll actually notice that a lot of these, all these reviews are clustered together because they discuss happy hours, bars, etc. So if I were to take a look at another, for example, let's look at cluster two, which contains 41 similar reviews. You'll see dress, wed, wear, cake. This is actually discussing wedding dresses or weddings specifically based on both the reviews again and the keywords. So now that we have these similar reviews, the next thing that I was interested in was to filter those that have higher ratings. So here we have a filter for 4 and 5-star reviews. So here you can see like a 5-star, and then let's just filter to 5 stars here. You can see that update in this network chart mod. So it's what in the center you see the actual rating, which is going to be 5 stars, and everything it's connected to is that business name or business identifier in this case. You can also add on a filter for sentiment. Say that you only want to filter those that have higher sentiment, for example, etc. But together, once we clicked on any one of these clusters and we're able to filter for the better reviews in that sense, we now have a corresponding list of businesses that we can recommend to everyone in this user group. So if anyone came in writing a review for Yelp saying we're interested in wedding dresses, we can then filter the similar reviews and find those that have maybe higher sentiment, maybe higher rating counts, and then send that list to the other users with similar interests. So this is effectively how we created a recommendation system based on just the text data itself and a clustering algorithm on top. So this has been a demo showing how we can do an advanced use case. Again, just working off of the 2 data functions within our NLP toolkit.
That was really awesome, Sweta. I love the different parts of it. The pre-trained models that you used, where were they from?
Those were from Spacey.
Oh, nice. Okay, very good. So I'm going to hand off to Helene now to give us some updates. One thing of note we'll get into in the discussion was, in addition to all those incredible data functions that Sweta used, she also used a bunch of Spotfire mods in there. I saw a network chart, I saw a text card, really cool, the combination of both the data functions and Spotfire mods. But let me hand off to Helene. We can pick that up in the discussion. Let me hand off to Helene to give us an update on the community, and we'll go from there. Helene, do you want me to advance your slides, or you want to do it yourself?
I'd like to share actually, so I can
Sure.
show the community. Thanks. So, hello everyone. So yeah, a quick update on the community resources. Sweta already showed what's available. She's done a brilliant job in supporting the assets that she created. But before we go there, I just wanted to remind you that we sent out a quarterly newsletter. So if you're interested in staying up to date approximately on a quarterly basis, you can sign up for this newsletter. We'll inform you of the next quarterly TIBCO Analytics meetup that's coming up. And, we typically highlight one of our main new assets available and any key events that are happening. You can also email us at askdatascience@tibco.com, and we will make sure that somebody answers your questions, or you can email us directly if you have our personal or our TIBCO addresses. And then you can also join our LinkedIn group. There's a TIBCO Data Science LinkedIn group, which is quite useful because we will post when we run Dr. Data Science or these TIBCO Analytics meetups. But we'll also post links there when we have the recording and the slides available for you to download. So please join us in any of those options. So these are the resources that are supporting the NLP toolkit that Sweta just showed. She actually showed us the item on the TIBCO Community Exchange. Let me just show you what it looks like on the community. If it allows me, it doesn't allow me to switch. Hold on 1 second. Yep, there we go. Okay, so this is community.tibco.com. You can very easily search there. There's lots of different functions on the community. You can ask questions. You just need to sign up. Once you're a member, you can ask questions, download all the items that Michael and Sweta just mentioned. The items are on the exchange. So Sweta pointed to the specific item, but there's actually lots of different items, both the mods as well as the data functions, and this NLP Python toolkit, which is a combination of data functions. So you can click on that and then download it from there. This is actually what Sweta just showed you. So just so you know how to navigate to that. On the wiki, we've got lots of different articles that explain to you how things work. You can just quickly search. For example, the data function library that Michael mentioned is available there. You would have to just select the type of asset that you're looking for on the community, in this case, a wiki, click on the link, and it gives you that page. And this is a really nice page because it groups all the different data functions by sort of functional area. But then it also shows you each of them with a screenshot and a direct link to the community exchange. So that's really useful. And the other thing I wanted to show is the blog. So there's a blog that Sweta wrote. There's lots of different technical blogs available, but this one in particular also summarizes more in a sort of a technical summary of the toolkit, and again with links to all the resources. So I think with all of that, you should really be enabled to start using this yourself. So moving on some other resources, I think Spotfire Mods we've covered. We'll share these slides with you so you can download and use all these links yourself. I noticed, by the way, that the chat in this webinar is disabled this time, but you can post questions in the Q&A. So please post your questions if you have any. We'll get to that shortly. The one thing that we also wanted to mention is that we continue to develop our TIBCO AI apps, and those are really more industry or solution focused applications that we built. We often present those in the TIBCO Analytics meetup. You've seen some of these, but we continue to develop them. So keep an eye on these because we continuously update this page as well on the community. Just search for TIBCO AI apps or AI on demand. And last but not least, the YouTube channels. If you enjoy more sort of visual presentations, please subscribe to either the TIBCO Data Science or the TIBCO Spotfire channel, or both. It'll be a really easy way to get access to all of the content, demo videos, Dr. Spotfire, Dr. Data Science, these webinars, any sessions that are relevant for our Spotfire and data science users. So with that, I think we can get to some questions. I'll leave this slide up for a little bit so you can take down some details. But then I would like to ask Michael and Sweta to join with the camera as well. And then we can just discuss a few questions on the topic of NLP before we wrap up.